T-minus 2 minutes and counting. All right, good evening, everybody. It is 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to start our August meeting. If everybody want to stand, face the flag, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. So if everybody take a look at the front screen, you'll notice the camera is in a little bit different position tonight. So I'm on top of the audio equipment off to the side. Gives a little bit better room or coverage of the room. And also what happens when you forget to bring the tripod. So gotta make adjustments. So all right. Do we have any guests here? First time you've been to OARC meeting as a guest? Want to stand up and say hello? Nice. Welcome to Orlando Amateur Radio Club. How many of you guys are actually licensed also? All right, excellent. Those of you not licensed, are you working to get licensed? All right. Are you looking for mentors or anybody that help you with that? I know, Sasha, I think we got you hooked up with somebody tonight. If you are interested or needing some help, help with the test, trying to study with the test, trying to explain things to you, let us know. We can definitely get you guys hooked up with mentors. It could be somebody you talk to on the phone, converse with email, meet in person, however you guys decide is up to you. All right. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can even go to our website, put a fill out a form and say, hey, I'm needing some help. I'd like to get in touch with a mentor. We'll more than happy to get you hooked up. Okay. All right. Test session. Bob, busy night tonight.
Yeah, we had actually we had 18 people pre-registered. 3 people did not show tonight, but of the 15 people that did take tests, everybody but one passed something. So we ended up with 4 new technicians, 8 new generals, and 2 new extras.
Congratulations. And are you anybody that passed one of those tests are still here tonight? Stand up. Congratulations. And hopefully that you also saw Rick and get a free 1-year membership through OARC and become a club member. And we welcome you to be at these meetings every single month with us and learn like all of us do every month. All right, I got a couple updates to give everybody. I see that Dean and Anna have joined by Zoom. In case you have not heard, Dean and Anna moved to Wisconsin. They had an opportunity to go to Wisconsin, and they are bragging on continuous occasions when I talk to Dean, or excuse me, talk to Anna. It's only like 70 degrees up there right now during the summer. I'm like, it's kind of warm down here. You don't have to be telling us that. So, yeah. Yep. When they have about 6 feet of snow they got to deal with or more, we'll go, it's nice down here. It's 70 degrees. We got to tease them and stuff. definitely they're going to be missed. Dean has stepped aside off the board of directors. Anna is still on the board currently as a treasurer. And Christy has been appointed to the board. Christy Moore, she has taken Dean's spot and will finish out his term for him. And then also Christy will be working with Anna to be our new treasurer when Anna decides she's going to step aside also as a treasurer for OARC. Christy came on board having knowledge in finance and finance in different nonprofit organizations. And I'm sure that she's going to do a great job because OARC is a little bit unique in the way we have OARC and Hamcation. It's going to take a little time to understand exactly all the different things that we do here in the club to keep accurate and up-to-date books. So Christy is going to be working on that. And then when Christy becomes treasurer, we'll be appointing another director to fill out that term until elections come around in April of next year. So, but Anna also has agreed to stay on board as the Hamcation finance chairwoman. Mike, it's the finance part is all done locally, all done through bank accounts, all done through the internet, all done through QuickBooks and all that stuff. It's easy. So she's going to take care of all that stuff for Michael, at least for this year, possibly continue on that long. Depends on what Anna wants to do. So we wish you guys well up there in Wisconsin. You can stop texting me saying it's only 7 degrees up there, especially while we're sweating down here. But believe me, I'll be more than happy to tell you it's 70 degrees here when you guys are freezing in a few months and stuff. And a huge thank you to Dean for being part of the board and everything he's done for OARC and the amateur radio community since they were living down here. You won't stop seeing them. They still have a house down here. They're still going to come back and forth. Plans are to come down for Hamcation, those types of things won't change. They've been down here probably more than they have been up in Wisconsin, going back and forth right now because a couple different things have happened. Unfortunately, Anna's lost her mom a couple weeks ago. And so she was down here and went back up there, came back down and stuff. So they've done a lot of back and forth traveling, but right now they're probably going to be up in Wisconsin for a while and stuff. And I know they had plans on trying to get back down here for Hamcation. So we'll look forward to seeing them then. Besides that, by then they'll probably need a break from that colder weather. So, all right, I'm going to give you an update on Eris and Sally Ride Elementary School. We actually just had a meeting with over at Sally Ride today. At 2:00, we actually had to get some horizon measurements and stuff. So the team assembled over there. We also got a timeline down to when we're going to be going to the school to do instructions on amateur radio. And once all that's compiled, a chart is drafted. We'll get that information out to everybody who registered to help volunteer. We are going to need those volunteers. It is a school of 400 individuals. I know we're going to be teaching at least most of the ones in the magnet program. All of them. Okay. There was a lot to talk back and forth, so I couldn't remember exactly where we ended up at. So there's got a lot to do in a very short amount of time because we will be having the contact the week of December the 16th with the ISS. Okay. We don't know what day it's going to be yet. We won't know that until December 9th, when the week of December 16th we'll have for the contact. They'll give us a couple different options. We'll select what option works best for us and the school, and then we'll go from there. But there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of planning to be done, and all this is going to start in the third week of September. First week of September. Third week. Yeah, third week of September. Trying to work things in with school calendars and vacation calendars and all that stuff was quite fun. But I know we have a good team. And I know we have a good team of volunteers. A lot of you guys have stepped up to the plate to volunteer to help in some capacity. And we appreciate that very much. I know information has been very limited at this point or up to this point, but that's because during the summer, there's not a lot going on at the school, and teachers aren't really checking their email, and a lot of planning isn't happening quite yet. School starts next week. Everything's going to start bulldozing through very quickly. Okay. So you're going to probably get overloaded with information very fast for those of you guys who volunteered.
I do know we're going to need more volunteers because we will be there 2 days in September, 2 days in October, and 2 days in November to teach classes, teach their magnet program about amateur radio, what it is, and then we're going to do that's the one in September. October would be a little different where it'll be the same students again, but teach them something else. And then in November, we want to do a hands-on building a antenna with them. So we will need lots of help. Plus there's a teach-in day that they want us to come to also. So over the next 3 months, we're going to be there quite a bit teaching these kids.
And there's also going to be one day that we're going to be sitting down with the students who have been selected to talk to the astronauts and about the procedures and everything that goes on with that to make sure they understand what has to be done before we actually have the contact with them. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done, short amount of time. Volunteers are going to be greatly needed. We're not asking everybody to volunteer for every little event or every little teach-in or project that goes on, but participate or volunteer when you can will be greatly appreciated. So, and again, more information is coming, and we'll get that out to everybody. So, question is, I always like to ask this question: who read the newsletter? Ooh, there's a few more hands this month. Good. All right. So, if you read the newsletter, and we kind of talked about this, I sent an email out on this also because I meant to do it earlier in the month and I didn't get a chance to. We're going to make a little bit of a change to our meeting agenda. Our presentations are getting better and better to the point they're getting a little longer, and you guys got great questions at the end, and we want to make sure we allocate enough time so everybody learns what they need to learn with amateur radio and all the different topics we have every month or every meeting. So what we're going to do is to help consolidate some time is our club announcements that we do. Is where a lot of the guys get in front of everybody and say, hey, this is what's going on in our club. This is when we meet, so on and so forth. Is actually going to get moved to the newsletter. We're going to have a whole section just allocated for club, like neighboring clubs when they meet, contact information, that type of stuff. Then if you have a certain subject that you want to share, for example, I'm going to say Lamar's next month is going to do a presentation on such and such, and they want everybody to know about it because if they like to have more hams out there, they're going to have to send that information to Ed by a certain date, and that will be put in for that next month's newsletter for that 1 month, and then it reverts back to their normal listing. If nothing else, to send in for the next month after that. So if you are a club representative, we have some forms up here. I have them over here. During break, come and see me. I'll give you a form. This will get us started with getting this started for next month, the next month's newsletter. So that way Ed has something to start, consolidating the information, making a page for it, and getting everything ready. Okay. And this will help us, consolidate a little bit of time during the month, make sure we have enough time for our meetings. Our presentations mostly, and it gives everybody an opportunity to learn without being rushed at the end and trying to get out of here by a certain time so that the facilities employees can come in here and get ready for the next day by getting things set up in here. So, so we're going to start that again next month. This month, we'll still do the same. If you don't have anything extra, excuse me, don't have anything that you want to bring up that's new this month, you don't have to get up this month if you don't want to. You can just put it in the newsletter next month. It's fine. We're just trying to consolidate a little bit of time. I meant to have this already in progress, but it kind of got waylaid with a personal move, moving to a new apartment and stuff. So we'll get that going. Anybody have any questions on that? What's that? Well, the newsletters, yeah, the newsletter is always posted. When I go to send it out, I usually post up on the website anyway, so it's always going to be up there, and you can go back and look at all previous newsletters that we have electronic copies of, at least. and stuff up on the news or up on the website. So scrolling during the meeting, like up here, would be kind of difficult and stuff. So anyways, moving on to our Christmas party. Guess what time of year it is? Cue the sleigh bells. So we always started about that early, and I know it sounds early, and we're going to hear about this next couple of months. But the reason why is because we only sell tickets for the Christmas party at the meetings, the 3 monthly meetings prior to December, which we don't have a meeting in December. We just have the Christmas party. So starting next month, September, October, and November, you can purchase your Christmas party tickets. All right, here at the meeting, they're $10 for members and their spouse, $10 each, $25 each for any non-members. Okay. We're going to do the Toys for Tots like we have in the past. Collect toys for tots. And then also, if you have not been to a OARC Christmas party in the past, let me ask this question. Everybody in the room that right now that has been at a OARC Christmas party in the past, raise your hand. Is it something that everybody should attend at least once? Okay. We have a good time. We do a great dinner. It's catered in from 2J's. And then also we do an awards, give out awards that night. And we have a lot of door prizes we give away, amateur radio related and non-amateur radio related door prizes. So if your spouse is coming, she can get a ticket and get something that's not amateur radio related. And there's usually a lot of things go out that door. One year we had enough that almost everybody walked out with something. Okay. And the centerpieces are door prize are also door prizes, and that's the last thing we give out. So the centerpieces that are always been made, handcrafted, if you will, those are kind of also given away. So it's a good time with everybody. The doors open at 6 o'clock at the Knights of Columbus over off of Cimarron Boulevard, and dinner start at 7. And then as soon as dinner gets over with, there's a huge dessert table with lots and lots of desserts, a lot of homemade desserts and stuff. So, yeah, desserts are very, very good. Yes, sir. Nope, it's actually going to be the first Saturday of December. So we don't have a meeting in December. So instead of the meeting, we have the Christmas party. So it'll be December the 7th. The doors again open at 6 o'clock. Again, for $10, you get a catered dinner. It's usually a Christmas or holiday style buffet. Turkey, ham, it's usually some type of beef or brisket, with all the fixings that go with it, salad, all the different things that go with it. And then desserts are made, usually brought in for the dessert table. So we have desserts. And then there's usually an open bar, or a cash bar, I should say, that you can get drinks while you're there. And then all water and soda is provided by the club. So if you want to purchase a drink, you can purchase a drink and stuff. And it's all done at the Knights of Columbus. It's on Cornelia, by Cornelia and 436, just north of 50 and 436 area. So we've had a really good time, very festive, a lot of door prizes go out, big door prizes, small door prizes, all types of door prizes. And of course, is our annual awards ceremony that night too, where we get to spotlight. I'm going to use the word spotlight some club members. Okay. So it's always a good time. So again, tickets are going to be available September, October, and November. We don't sell tickets at the door because we need to know how many people are going to be there so we have enough food for everybody. Because the last thing we want is make sure we don't have enough food for people. So that's catered. So caterer kind of wants to know everything about 2 weeks out. So we usually last one in November, last meeting in November. Yes, sir. Kids are welcome. One thing we always ask is please, keep them under control and stuff. So and the reason why I say is the room holds about 140 people, and we've had up to 130 people in this room. So it does get a little bit crowded and stuff. So we just want to make sure there's enough room and everybody's comfortable for the evening. Okay. So, and the room is always decorated very nicely, very festive. So it's like a holiday Christmas party for us. So we look forward to you. If you have not been to one of our Christmas parties, I urge you, please come come and experience one with us this year. All right, Michael. Hamcation updates. He's typing away on his computer. Oregon Hamcation.
Hi there. Is it presentation time?
Well, not that yet. It's going to be Michael with Hamcation stuff first.
Oh, okay.
Different, Michael. Sorry.
You say Michael, I spring to attention, man.
All right. Real quick, Hamcation is coming up. If nobody knows, the website is live, so you can go up and volunteer. And yes, we do need lots of volunteers. So you can go up there under the volunteer page. It is open, ready to go. If you do want to buy a ticket, you can go up there and buy the ticket. But if you volunteer for 4 hours, you do get a free ticket. And volunteering starts the Monday of Hamcation and runs all the way until that Sunday. So if you want to volunteer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you can still enjoy the show Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with a free ticket. So that's a way you can get yourself a free ticket. Also, if you work, we'll just say a full day, I won't call it 8 hours, but if you come there close 7 hours, work a full day, we do provide either lunch or dinner, depending on what time you're there, for you also. The other thing is, a lot of y'all know if you keep track of your hours, you can donate toward a nonprofit of your choice, and we make a donation to that organization after all the bills are paid at the end of the year. Donations range from $20 to several $1,000s for organizations, depending on how many people donate to certain organizations. So keep that in mind also. The other thing, just to let you know, if you have family that wants to volunteer and help, you do not have to be an amateur radio operator. So if your husband, wife, kids, if they're old enough, can come out and help out, do some stuff, we'll take anybody. So it takes usually 400 to 500 volunteers, and every year we're short. So please volunteer if you can. On that note, I am looking for a couple chairman and assistant chairman for Hamcation. Those are the folks that actually oversee or on the committee to help oversee Hamcation. I do know that I'm in need of an IT chairman. So somebody that has IT experience, and I can go over that more with you if you're interested in what's we're looking for. I also need a tailgate chairman. Tailgate is outside. Take care of all the outside tailgate vendors out there. Good area to be. That's actually where I started with Hamcation before I become chairman many, many years ago. Back in 2010. That's how long I've been on the committee. Tailgate's a very unique area, very different out there. You can find some good deals before the show opens. Trust me, I noticed I just moved and I had boxes and boxes full of ham radio gear that I need to get rid of because I don't have room for it no more. And most of it was from my years in tailgate. So need those. I also need some assistant chairs. I do know tailgate needs an assistant chair yet. Also, IT needs an assistant chair. If you're in the newsletter, all this was in the newsletter also. So I don't remember who all it is. We have almost 40 positions on the committee. But if you are interested in volunteering for a chairman or assistant chair's position, please see me. I can tell you more information. I can look up exactly what I am needing. But the biggest thing, if you're not want to do that part of it, please volunteer. Please come out and help. Just like I say, without the volunteers, Hamcation would not be where it is today. So that's all I have.
All right, appreciate it.
And real quick, I did see a lot of hands in here of visitors and new people. Does everybody understand what Hamcation is? Anybody don't know what Hamcation is?
And if you don't be shy. Just raise your hand. We'll love to explain.
All right. Hamcation is the second largest amateur radio trade show in the world. So if you want to learn about ham radio, buy ham radio gear, anything like that, all your major vendors of ham radio supplies and radios will be there. And including Kenwood, Yazoo, ICOM, Elecraft, Flex. You can buy coax. You can buy pretty much anything you can think of, amateur radio or even radio related, there. Swaps. Swaps is basically an indoor flea market. If it's made, you can find it there. If it's been made in the last 200 years, you can find it in there. So yeah. But that's what it is. It happens once a year in February, here in Orlando at the Central Florida Fairgrounds. And just like I said, this is why we need volunteers. By having everybody volunteering, it's less work or money that goes out of the pot to hire people to do the show. So that's why we need so many volunteers.
And it's also a way, if you are members of other ham radio clubs, that you can donate to those ham radio clubs and help finance those ham radio clubs for the following year. I think that this year we gave out over $16,000 in donations to other amateur radio organizations and nonprofit organizations that people chose to donate to. And like Michael said, some of the donations were small as $20 for only a couple hours that they worked, to as high as a couple $1,000, depending on, how many hours that were volunteered for that organization. So it's a great way to give back, and your time is much appreciated. And we need, like Michael said, as many volunteers as possible to get the job done. And we have fallen short the past couple of years. I'm sure COVID had a lot to do with it. Everybody getting a little bit older too, not wanting to volunteer as much and stuff. But if you are need a position that is a sit down position, we have a position that we can obviously have you volunteer in. If you are capable of lifting things and boxes and stuff, logistics needs lots of help. Okay. Moving, we have 2 full storage units that we have to load up the Sunday before into a 26-foot U-Haul truck. And that barely is enough room for everything that we have to move. Okay. So there's a lot of gear that has to be moved, and a lot of things that take place to put on Hamcation. So between now and February, you're going to get tired of us talking about it, because by then you're going, okay, I'll volunteer, just so I don't have to hear about it anymore. Okay. But it's the truth. It does take a lot. All right. I'm going to go around to the room real quick and to our board members for any announcements they have. Michael, did you have anything else? Michael, did you have anything else? Anna, did you have anything that you wanted to say to the club?
Yeah, it's 74 degrees here.
Oh,
Hey,
God.
can you save me a glazed donut, please?
Sure, we'll save you one.
No, I'm good.
I'm not so sure yet. It might not be quite glazed. It might be kind of green by the time you get here, but all right. Bobbin, anything? Bob C, Ed, James, Christy, and then Frank G is not here. Frank T. All right. Going around to the clubs. We're going to do this kind of quickly because I want to get started with the presentation after our break. CFRA. All right. Well, everybody's going to want their refreshments soon. So you might want to start grabbing that stuff and get ready. QCWA and Lamar's.
I'm Ed Thralls, the Vice President of QCWA, and we meet the second Thursday of the month at about 12:30 at Perkins on 436, about 1 block east of HRO, except for August. We're not meeting this month. So we'll see you next month.
All right. Lamar's Joe.
Lamar's/Hams in the Park. My name's Joe, KQ4 AID, and Hams in the Park. July, we had the biggest event ever. We had 17 folks there. And last month, we had 13 folks. So even before that was the very first one was our biggest at 12. So it's growing exponentially. Our next one will be September the 7th. And for people that are not familiar with Hams in the Park, we meet at a local park in the area, and we start at 8 o'clock. We typically leave around 1, maybe earlier if the weather is not cooperating, but you're welcome to stay later. Everyone's welcome, licensed or not, with gear, without gear. And we just sit up, we operate, we work with each other, whatever it is the group needs, the individuals need. We work with everybody to try and make sure they're happy when they leave. And again, it's September 7th at Blue Jacket Park, and there'll be an email about it, and we'll send you a link to exactly to where we will be located. Yeah, September 9th. September 9th, Lamar's will be holding its yearly club auction. So September 5th. Thank you. First Thursday, whichever one that is, okay, in September, Lamar's will be holding its annual club auction. If you're interested, let us know, please. Thanks.
Hey, Michael, might be an opportunity to get rid of some of your gear you want to get rid of. All right, CERT. All right, CERT Ham Radio Group. Clerk on CERT. Come on up. Microphone. You're a ham. Microphone shouldn't scare you.
I was just recently approached by our condo where I live that they need first aid training. I am looking for basic first aid books. If any of you have any or know where I can get them at a reasonable price, please let me know. Because what I've priced so far with Red Cross is $13 a book, and I need like 20 books. We've had incidences where four of our staff members have been stung with bees multiple times. We have an AED machine that nobody knows how to use. So they want some clarification. So I'm going to do that, but I'm desperately seeking first aid books. So if you guys know of where I can get my hands on some, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
That's why he said Donna. Donna might have some books. All right, radio scouting.
Hello, hello everyone. I'm Ken, KN4MDJ, and fall is around the corner. It is our busiest time. We have Jamboree on the Air, which is the third weekend in October. And because we have so many scouts, we have 7,000 scouts over 6 weekends starting in September. So if anybody would like to bring out their Go Box and show some new scouts, so the older scouts will be the first 2 weekends, which will be the weekends in September. And then all of the younger scouts, which are from age 5 to 17, will be the October weekends. So we're roughly having 2,000 scouts per weekend out there, and we set up on our basketball court. So just think field day. The only difference is you have kids that have never seen it. You are the first impression of ham radio, and this is where we make that impact. So far this year, we've had 29 scouts. When we added up all of our different clubs, we've had 29 scouts licensed this year. Most of them have been in Tampa Council and in the Philippine Council, but we're still working on it locally. I think we had 3 licensed in our council here. That's our biggest thing is if anybody needs or can help or come out for a few hours, it's up in Paisley, up on 42. You can reach me at kn4mdj@gmail.com.
Thank you, sir. And next is Shriners Ham Radio Group. Then.
I'm Dan, KT3S, president of Bahia Shrine Amateur Radio Unit. We will have our annual tailgate. It's Saturday, November 2. It's over at the Shrine Center on 436, 8 till noon. I'll print up some announcements, have them here next week or next month, and everybody's welcome.
Appreciate it. And we signal.
The 10 gig beacon is on again. Time for the contest. It's a 2-month event. The first one is 17th, 18th of this month. And for details, go to ARRL.
Short. AMSAT. Laura. Lake Amateur Radio Association. Solavita. It's a microphone. Stand up front.
Solvita Senior Community down in Poinciana has a radio club that's quite active. They do fox hunts, they do field day. They meet on the last Thursday of the month at the Gator Room there on property. It is a gated community, so if you want to come down, just reach out and we can get you on the pass gate access so you can get in. We do have members. I'm not even a full member because of the fact I don't even live in the community.
Good. All right. You want to do anything with Osceola, Aries? Since you're also a member there.
Also serve on the board of directors for Osceola County Aries. We meet on the last Monday of the month at the Osceola County EOC on Parton Settlement Road. We're still working to rebuild. So after COVID, we pretty much got decimated in our membership. So things are improving. We've got an active board that's actively trying to make a change.
All right, Frank, did you have anything for Seminole? All right, and then tomorrow night is Orange County Aries meeting at the Orange County EOC at 7 p.m. And ours is what kind of an ad lib topic is going to be what can go wrong during hurricane preparations, will go wrong. Is kind of the basis of our topic and discussion tomorrow night. All right, so we're going to come back here at let's say 15 after. I got 8 o'clock now, so 8:15 we're going to come back and we'll do Michael's presentation on fast track to understanding ham radio propagation. Michael Burnett is going to be our speaker. Ed will do the formal introduction. So at 8:15, if you are a club representative that wants your club's information to be posted in our newsletter, here are the forms. Please come by and stop by and grab one. Please make sure that Ed gets them before you leave. And that will start the process for, as of next month, the club announcements will be all in the newsletter. Okay. If you are a member recently renewed or recently joined as in the past couple of months and still haven't got your ID card, please see Rick. Rick has a stack of ID cards up there. Yours could be there. All right. And then we'll see you back here at 8:15. All right, guys, we got about 1 minute. 1 minute, we're going to get started. Uno momento. All right, guys, if you want to start getting your refreshments and have a seat, we're going to get started. Huh?
That I got. Field day.
Oh, for the club. Okay. Like, man, $50 anytime, man. All right, guys, we're going to get started. If everybody will have a seat. It is that time. As I mentioned before the break, if you are a club representative and need a form to fill out to provide your information to go into the newsletter when your club meets, dates, times, whatever, there's the form. The information we are looking for is right up front here. Please feel free to come up and grab one and make sure that Ed gets it before you leave tonight, or email him the information at his email address, which is on the website. All right, Mr. Ed, you ready? All right, let's go.
Okay, this evening, Michael Burnett. Hello, Michael. How you doing?
I do.
Nice to meet you there. Michael Burnett, AF7 KB, and his wife Carrie, KC7YL, have been created the popular series of ham license courses known as Fast Track Series. Michael built a crystal radio at age 8 and went on to have a career in commercial radio. He's an in-demand speaker at major ham conventions, and that's how I found him. He was making a presentation at another location, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. And his book on propagation has been published by the Radio Society of Great Britain. So tonight, thank you very much, Michael, for your willingness to share your expertise, and I'll shut up and it's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Yeah, I have to show this off. This is, we just got this in the mail. Let's see if I can make it. Oh, focus. Come on, silly thing. Well, that's our book published by the Radio Society of Great Britain. For some reason, Zoom doesn't want to show it in focus, or else it's really blurry. But we were just so proud to have that happen. It was really cool. So let me get my screen share going here, and we'll do that one. And yep, that should be it. And then let's turn my video off so that we're not creating excess lag here. All right, now, first, this is something to mesmerize you as we get started here, but it's also relevant to the presentation. So just take a look at that as I chatter here a little bit, and just watch that inner circle right there, and just in your mind, try to predict where it is going next and think about how you'd build a mathematical model maybe to predict where that's going next. Now, one thing that's difficult on Zoom is questions. So you all are about the size of a business card on my screen, so I won't see your hand if you are waving during the presentation. I do want to answer your questions, so save them for the end. And Ed, maybe you can kind of moderate, because when people speak from the audience, I've noticed I don't hear a thing here. So that we can handle it that way. But I do want to handle those questions. All right, so I am, as he said, Michael Burnett, AF7KB, and the author of the reasonably popular license training programs called the Fast Track series, and also kind of a YouTube sensation. We have some training videos, and one of them is up to almost 59 views at this point, so we're pretty excited about that. I'm also the author of this book on ham radio propagation, which is our topic today. So, what is propagation? My take on it is propagation is everything that happens to your signal between the transmitting antenna and the receiving antenna. Different things happen based on where the signal starts its journey, what's in the path of its journey, and what frequency the signal is. Maybe, though, a more useful question is, what is propagating? In other words, what is the nature of that radio signal? Understanding that is, to my mind, one of the keys to understanding propagation. Now, of course, the answer turns out to be anything but straightforward. Radio signals and light are dual-natured. In fact, they are so confoundingly strange that language sort of breaks down as we try to describe them. We could say that radio signals consist of particles and/or they consist of waves. But even that tortured bit of English language doesn't quite convey the strange duality of these things that we so casually fling out into the universe. Fair warning, this is going to get a little weird. We can do experiments that absolutely prove that radio signals are waves and they are not particles. And we can do experiments that absolutely prove that they are just the opposite. Now, before we go too much farther, just in case there are any physics professors with us today, let me say right up front that I have taken liberties with some of the physics involved in what we're addressing today in order to serve the multiple interests of time, intelligibility, and, for me, minimum math. Now, here's good old Albert. We're not going to try to resolve the dualistic nature of electromagnetic radiation here today. There's no treasure down that tube. Instead, since we can interpret a radio signal as either a wave or a particle at our convenience, we'll use that fact to further our understanding of propagation. The good news, though, is that you can think of any mode of propagation as either a wave phenomenon or a particle phenomenon, whichever one makes the most sense to you. In this little book, we cover over a dozen distinct modes of propagation and several subsets of those modes. We're not going to cover all those tonight because we're in Orlando with 10,000 things to do in our lives. Instead, we'll look at a handful of modes, and along the way, we'll note whether we can apply the particle model or the wave model to better understand those modes. I mean, everything I do with ham radio teaching is about teaching people how to think about stuff. I don't want to just teach them stuff. I want to teach them how to think about stuff. So we'll start down here on the ground and we'll work our way up to the sky. We'll start with ground wave propagation. This one's a favorite of the top banders, the folks on 160 meters. A ground wave leaves the transmitting antenna, and at least for a while it goes cross-country, following the curvature of the Earth. How does this happen? Don't radio waves always travel in a straight line? Spoiler alert, the answer here in the real world is no, almost never. We learn early on in our radio education that radio waves travel at the speed of light, which is true as far as it goes. It's just the speed of light isn't always, well, the speed of light, or at least it isn't always 300 million meters per second. That's the speed of light in a vacuum. In air, the speed of light and of radio waves is a little slower, and through the Earth, it's a little slower still. So to create a ground wave, we need an antenna, and a vertical is generally the superior choice here, and we need ground radials. To create, think of that system as inducing a wave that's partially in the air and partially in the earth. The part of the wave that's passing through the earth is moving just a bit slower than the part passing through the air. And so as it moves along, this whole thing sort of leans over and it sticks close to the ground. It's something like when you're riding an escalator and your hand is traveling just a little bit faster than your feet. And we've all done that experiment of seeing how long we can hold our hand on the escalator. Now, what happens is eventually that wave just falls all the way over and disappears into the earth. So that's why certain frequencies work well and others don't. I mentioned that top banders, those folks on 160 meters, are very interested in ground waves. They can provide excellent propagation in the near range, out to, say, 50 miles or so. On a good night, maybe 100. Ground wave propagation is superbly dependable. Ground waves don't fade, they don't disappear if you get a building between you and the transmitter, and they don't stop working just because the sunspots are having a bad day, or a bad decade, as we recently experienced. So how do we create ground waves? Well, commercial AM stations operating down there just below our 160 meter band spend a lot of money to create strong ground waves. Why do they do that? Well, if you're a radio station in Orlando, Florida, there is no money in serving the people in Reno, Nevada. You make your money in Orlando. So they want a good, strong local signal. They do that by having massive ground radial systems under their vertical antennas. Typically, they'll have about 120 quarter wave ground radials strung out around the base of their quarter wave vertical antenna. So every 3 degrees, another quarter wave long vertical. That is a lot of copper. That's wheelbarrows full of money on the ground there, as you know if you've purchased much copper lately. A more economical solution for us mere mortals is the inverted L antenna with a horizontal element, a vertical element, and ground radials more along the lines of what most of us are accustomed to in ham radio. In other words, however much wire we could afford down at the Home Depot and strung out around the yard as well as we could to get around all the trees and everything else. So ground waves depend on ground conductivity. The more of it, the better. So if you want to create a great ground wave, you need to have the foresight to live in a part of the country with great ground conductivity. Now here is a map of U.S. ground conductivity, and if you can read the tiny little numbers there, you'll see that out here in Oklahoma and Kansas and Nebraska and even up through the middle of the country there, we see some pretty high numbers. Those are Siemens or Mohs, as some of us remember conductivity numbers, so higher numbers are better. Here in the Great Northwest, where I am, you would think, I mean, the Northwest is kind of notorious for being a really soggy place. You'd think we'd have all kinds of ground conductivity, but water is not what conducts electricity. Minerals in the water conduct the electricity, and our minerals got washed out a long time before any human beings got here. And guess what? Down here in Florida, you don't have much going on in the way of ground conductivity either. That's why your electrical code says you have to drive really long ground rods to get a decent ground where you are. So it's really unlikely that you'll create much of a ground wave at frequencies above, say, 5 megahertz. And even if you do create one, it's not going to go very far. So 160 meters, yes. 80 meters, maybe. 60 meters, not totally impossible. 40 meters, really not going to be happening. All right, now let's touch a little bit on VHF, UHF propagation. We all learn about line of sight propagation when we study for our technician license, but the test never mentions the fact that down here on the ground, pure line of sight is pretty rare. I mean, I'd be so bold as to say that most of the time, there's no such thing as line of sight propagation. For most of us, the predominant form of propagation that we're using in the VHF and UHF bands is not line of sight, but terrestrial scatter. Our signals being affected by goodness knows how many buildings, cars, trucks, mountains, lakes, and who knows what else on the way to the receiver. Now, I know y'all are in some pretty flat territory down there, and I just did a presentation a couple of weeks ago for some folks up in Minot, North Dakota, and that's really flat up there. But even there, and even in Florida, you're going to get terrestrial scatter, and that's going to be a lot of your propagation. Now, our signal is hopeless on paper. This is a plot of the topography between us and our club repeater. So here's us, and here's a bunch of basalt, and here's our club repeater up on a high building down in Everett, Washington. That is one big old hill that's in the way. And yet, we're on the club net just about every week. Carrie is one of the net controllers. In fact, she runs net control for the club now, and that's for our Sunday club net. And we do all that from our house. Now, our best guess is that we are either knife edge diffracting over this guy right here, which is not real likely. More likely, we're bouncing off the side of a mountain that's about 10 miles north of our house that has a clear shot to our house and to the repeater. Now, this sort of propagation, we can think of our signal as a stream of particles, ping-pong balls, ping-ponging semi-randomly around the area until they happen to intercept that antenna down there. Now, another way our VHF, UHF signals get to places beyond the line of sight is tropospheric scatter. Our atmosphere is usually not perfectly homogeneous. Think of a cup of coffee into which you just poured some cream before you stir it. There are discontinuities in our atmosphere, and each of those discontinuities presents an opportunity for refraction. I mean, that's where refraction happens. It's at abrupt changes in density. So you see here, we're just looking through the air, and that pencil's perfectly straight. And also looking through the water, the pencil's perfectly straight. It's a little bit enlarged, but it's still straight. But right here at this sudden break in continuity of density is where we get the refraction of that pencil image. Think of refraction as a bending of the signal's path. You bend that signal enough times, even if it's just a little bit each time, it might get pointed back toward Earth and make it far over the horizon. Tropospheric scatter, or just troposcatter to its fans, doesn't often work in our favor, though. Typically, it's just a source of multipath. Like a terrestrial version of sporadic E, though, every now and then it opens up, much to the delight of VHF, UHF, and even microwave DXers. Now, I think these forms of scatter are all best thought of in the particle model. Now, let's talk about one that works in the wave model, and that's something that happens in the VHF, UHF world, and it's named for this happy fellow, Augustin Jean Fresnel, and that is the Fresnel zone. So here's a nice, clean, open path between two nice high mountains. Those of you who are Florida natives, your neighbors will explain these to you. This is a happy signal path. This is great, totally free of obstructions. How often does that happen in the real world? Well, as a former commercial radio person, I can tell you not often enough, it seems like there are almost always obstructions of some sort. And yet, somehow, radio communications work day in and day out. So the question that we want to answer is, how bad is bad when it comes to signal paths? In other words, how much can we mess up that path and still have something that works? Now, there's actually a reasonably simple formula to model the zone between the transmitter and receiver that needs to be fairly free of obstructions to produce a useful signal at the receiver. So that zone is called the Fresnel zone. Now, what you're seeing here is not the radiation pattern of either of those antennas. This is just the shape, roughly, of the Fresnel zone. If something reflective impinges on the Fresnel zone, signal quality degrades. Now, I have to put a little disclaimer in here. In reality, I'm only telling you half of the story right here, but hang in there. We will get to chapter 2. So, in this picture, that mountain in the middle is going to seriously impede the transmission, even though it's shorter than the other two. And if I stood up here with my binoculars, I'd have a perfect line of sight over to here to the receiving antenna. Simply put, that mountain in the middle is going to create an interference pattern, and that will cancel part or even all of our signal. Now, we can calculate the radius of the Fresnel zone at any point along the signal path with a reasonably simple formula. Its radius equals 1/2 of the square root of lambda times d. And lambda is the wavelength of the frequency of the signal we want to send, and d is the distance from either end. It doesn't matter which end. The rule of thumb is that 60% of the Fresnel zone radius needs to be clear at any given point. So for a practical number, the full formula would be radius equals 1/2 times the square root of the wavelength times the distance times 0.6. So here's how this might apply in the real world. First, I do realize you're unlikely to be calculating the Fresnel zone that extends between your car's dual band antenna and the local repeater. That path is either going to work or it isn't. But let's say we want to build a permanent auxiliary transmitter that'll send signals to a repeater up on top of a local mountain. We do a path study on one of several computer-based tools that can do that sort of thing, and we end up with something like this. Everything here looks great. Look at that beautiful, looks great till we get here to point A, and that's 12 kilometers from the receiver. Right there, we have 20 meters of clearance over the top of that peak. Now, what frequency do we need to use to put a solid signal up to the receiver? Now a social complication. Our club member, Bob, because it's always Bob, has been a ham since about an hour after they invented lightning. And somewhere in his garage, he's pretty sure he has a perfectly fine, if slightly dusty, Heathkit 2-meter radio. And while he's reluctant to part with this potentially priceless antique, his wife would be very pleased indeed if he were to loan it to the club, forever, for this auxiliary station. Should we take him up on this almost irresistible deal? Well, let's check the numbers. Here we go. The radius we need is 1/2 times the square root of 2 meters times 12,000 meters. That's how far we are from the receiver, times 0.6. And we need, 47 meters of clearance over the top of that obstruction. That's not gonna work unless we build a taller tower on one end or the other. Sorry about that, Mrs. Bob. Now, I have had personal and rather stressful experience with the Fresnel zone. I was working at a commercial FM station in San Diego, California, and yeah, I know, tough duty, and we were moving the studios from one downtown building to another. Now, that right here is our signal path, going from this Well, it's the old Bank of America building in downtown San Diego, right along here to this expensive real estate that sits right up above Pacific Beach and La Jolla. That is some really expensive rent up there, but boy, what a place for a transmitter. Look at that, how you can cover San Diego from there. So we're moving the studios, and it turned out that the top of another building, that'd be this one right here, was just poking its big hairy toe into our Fresnel zone. Another section of tower, some hasty construction, strictly to code and with all necessary permits, I assure you, and we were back in business. I told you I'd get to the other half of the story, and this is it. The interference patterns created by impingements in the Fresnel zone are not necessarily destructive. They can also be constructive, leading to an even stronger signal. Now, given all the measurements, we always kind of suspected that we hadn't really managed to raise that antenna to a point that made the Fresnel zone clear, but we had just changed its position enough to make the interference pattern constructive rather than destructive. In any case, it worked, and the boss didn't throw us off the top of the building, so we're pretty happy about that. And that gets us to what I guess is the big topic when it comes to propagation, and that is, dum, 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 the ionosphere. To be an active HF operator is to have, let's say, a relationship with the ionosphere. And for at least some people, it can be a pretty emotionally turbulent relationship too. The ionosphere is the second highest part of Earth's atmosphere. The top layer is the exosphere, and really that's just the transition to deep space. There's not much interest for us up here in the exosphere. The ionosphere starts about 30 miles above the ground, and it continues way on out to about 1,000 miles above the ground. Now, the air up there is very, very thin. I mean, notice, here's the stratosphere. That's 30 miles up. And here's where the ionosphere starts, and here's where it starts to get really interesting. So it's really thin air. The molecules are a long ways away from each other up there in the thin air compared to down here in the thick air, to the tune of being anywhere from about 100,000 times thinner to over 1 million times thinner. Now, in this area here, 4 large complex forces come together to create the ionosphere. They are solar radiation, the Earth's geomagnetic field, terrestrial weather, and the ionosphere's own weather patterns. Now, solar radiation, the sun is constantly bombarding us and the rest of the solar system with radiation. In the case of the ionosphere, the relevant radiation for us is in the ultraviolet and X-ray frequencies. Now, the solar wind also has its effects on the ionosphere, as well as the occasional blasts of high-energy particles from solar storms, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks. Now, this is the way we usually get taught about the Earth's magnetic field. It is nice, it's tidy, it's symmetrical. Gosh, it's pretty. And that is completely not how it is. The Earth's geomagnetic field is a constantly shifting and wobbling thing. The result, probably, we don't know for sure, of what is basically a giant, sloppy electrical generator at the center of the Earth. This is a model of the geomagnetic field built by a supercomputer. This is more like it. As the Earth's solid iron core sloshes and rotates relative to the surrounding molten magma, electrical currents are created. Geologists call this the geodynamo, and as we know, where there is current, there is magnetism, and in this case, it's magnetism that tends to move around a lot. It practically ties itself in knots sometimes. The magnetic lines of force also get knocked around by solar storms, and all this tangling and untangling affects our ionosphere and our propagation. Terrestrial weather can affect the ionosphere both with massive air movements, with temperature changes beneath, and, we think, by pumping ions into the ionosphere from the tops of thunderstorms. And then there's ionospheric weather. This is where it really gets weird. That consists mostly of ferociously fast and strange winds. Down here on Earth, when the wind blows out of the north, the wind blows out of the north, and that's pretty much that. If a leaf gets caught in the breeze, it goes in the direction the breeze goes. You would be very surprised if you were flying a kite and it suddenly flew into the wind. Things are very different in the ionosphere, which consists of a form of matter called plasma. In plasma, we can have a neutral wind, an ion wind, and an electron wind, all going in different directions at the same time in the same place. To put it mildly, it rather complicates things. So 4 semi-random forces interacting in a semi-random way do not add up to a system whose behavior is easily predicted nor easily understood. Before we got started, I had that little video playing of a desk toy, one of these deals. Well, that little desk toy is a version of a physics problem that's called the two-pendulum problem. It's a demonstration of chaos theory. There is no mathematical way to predict what that inner ring will do next. And not only that, there never will be a mathematical way to predict that according to chaos theory. Two pendulums on a cheap, simple desk toy about a foot wide. Okay? 4 forces in the ionosphere, a giant, complicated thing, thousands of miles wide. Now, hopefully, this leaves you with a little less faith in the infallibility of propagation forecasts. If I have accomplished that, I have done what I came here to do. Now, fortunately, the dominant force of all of these is the sun, and we have a reasonably good handle on its effects, so we can generate at least some modestly useful predictions, mostly using some vintage software, it's really old now, known as VOACAP, and most of the propagation prediction engines out there are still using VOACAP at the heart of them. I'd just caution you, even if the so-called official prediction is for lousy propagation, that does not necessarily make it so. Really, propagation predictions were almost universally for horrible propagation for over a decade not long ago, and yet consider this, the ARRL kept sending out those Century Club awards constantly, so somebody was getting some propagation. Well, what's going on up there in the ionosphere anyway? Well, as that ultraviolet and X-ray radiation comes bombing in from the sun, it knocks electrons in the air molecules out of their orbits and out essentially into free space. What was a space of neutral charge has now become a space of not neutral charge. The free electron is carrying a negative charge. The atom it left behind is carrying a positive charge. For our purposes today, we're not concerned with the atom. The stuff we're interested in, the refraction of radio signals, is created by those free electrons floating around in space looking for a home in an atom that's missing an electron. The nighttime ionosphere is different from the daytime ionosphere. Now, of course, in reality, the ionosphere is staying more or less the same, and we're just rotating under it. The part of the ionosphere in the Earth's shadow is getting a lot less solar radiation than the part that's over here, in the, I'll go back, there we go, over here in the daytime side. In fact, that whole lower part of the ionosphere, you notice, kind of disappears on the night side. It doesn't have much going on in the way of free electrons, which turns out to be really good news for us. That lowest layer is what we call the D layer. Now, when Edward Appleton first started researching the ionosphere, he discovered there was a region at a fairly consistent height above the ground that would return electromagnetic waves. And so in his notes, he shorthanded it to the E layer. Now, later, we discovered more layers, and now that was officially the E layer because Edward Appleton said so, and we named them the D layer and the F1 and F2 layers. F1 and F2 blend into one layer on the night side, and we just call that the F layer. Now, those layers' boundaries are constantly shifting, and they're defined by the rate of change in free electron density versus altitude and by their behavior in regard to radio waves. Let me hit that again. They're defined by the rate of change in free electron density versus altitude. So we go along here and we get a sudden change in the rate of the change in density. Okay, and that's what makes the refraction, just like when we looked at that glass. So the D layer disappears at night, leaving us for a little while around sunset and sunrise with the E layer, and as the night wears on, the F layer. Now, why is it that sometimes, say, 20 meters works really nicely at night, and sometimes it doesn't? Well, that has to do with levels of solar activity. And the easiest indicator we have for increased solar activity is the presence of sunspots. Simply put, more sunspots equals more solar activity. In other words, the sun is shining brighter, and that equals better propagation. So understand, sunspots don't create propagation. They have nothing to do with propagation. They're just a symptom of what does create it, which is heightened solar radiation. Now, for reasons we really do not understand, solar activity, and thus sunspots and good HF propagation, follow a 22-year cycle, giving us peaks every 11 years. Or not. Sometimes the solar maximum is a dud, like the one before this one. Sometimes the solar maximum doesn't show up at all, like during the Maunder minimum back around 1645 to 1715. Let me tell you, nobody back here got their DXCC. Propagation was terrible. Regarding all this, nobody knows the mechanisms behind it. We're kind of starting to get some clues, but believe me, we're a long way from understanding it. There are many mysteries about our ionosphere and our sun that we've not yet solved. So to understand what's happening to our radio signals in ionospheric propagation, I think it's useful to use the particle model of radio signals. To get a radio signal refracted, we need what you might call the Goldilocks combination of atmospheric density and solar radiation. So now imagine a photon, because that's what we're sending out, from our antenna blasting up to the ionosphere. One of three things is going to happen next. One, signal zaps straight through the ionosphere, never to be heard from again by anyone on Earth. Two, your signal gets refracted back to Earth, hooray! Or three, your signal gets absorbed by the ionosphere. Let's say we're transmitting on 20 meters. For our little fantasy, that photon is 20 meters wide. It gets up to the ionosphere, and it encounters a bunch of free electrons that are about, say, 19 meters apart from each other. Again, this is fiction. If you're a physics professor, don't rise up and start throttling me. Bam! Something wonderful happens. That signal gets bent at least a little bit from its straight path to outer space. It encounters a few more free electrons, spaced 19 meters apart, and then a few more. And the next thing you know, it's headed away from the charged particles and back down toward Earth, where some ham thousands of miles away is anxiously listening for your signal. That is a simple version of ionospheric propagation, the phenomenon that makes worldwide radio communication possible. Your signal has become what we call a sky wave, as opposed to a ground wave. In practice, that sky wave might come back to Earth, bounce off the Earth, head back up to the ionosphere, get bounced again, maybe even repeat that cycle up to 5 times before reaching that distant antenna. But what if our 20-meter photon heads up to a quiet ionosphere and it finds electrons spaced 80 meters apart? Well, whoosh, it probably shoots straight through. And unless you're trying to QSO with the aliens on planet X, you are out of luck for the night. So imagine you're holding a beach ball that's 2 feet in diameter. That beach ball is your signal. You're trying to bounce it off a picket fence. Maybe you're blindfolded. If the fence's pickets are an inch apart, that ball's going to bounce back pretty dependably. However, imagine that the picket fence has pickets that are 3 feet apart. Well, then your beach ball's not going to bounce back nearly as often. What you need is a 4-foot beach ball. That would be a lower frequency radio wave in this tortured metaphor to make that work dependably. So the maximum usable frequency, the MUF, is determined by the free electron density. How close together are the fence pickets? As we get more free electrons, the MUF goes higher. We can bounce a smaller beach ball. More free electron density, more charged particles closer together equals higher frequencies will bounce. So, apparently that means 160 meters is the very best DX frequency, right? I mean, that's the one with the colossal wavelength, the biggest beach ball. Must be the absolute best for skipping signals around the globe, right? If I could see the 160 meter operators out there, they'd be shaking their head right now. Well, before I address that question, here's something that might, at first glance, seem like a distinction without a difference, but it's about to become very significant. When we bounce a signal off the ionosphere, your signal does not get reflected, not quite like a mirror reflects right straight back at you, okay? It's more like it's being absorbed and re-radiated by those free electrons. So that electron is sitting there, our 20-meter signal hits it, and the electron goes, whoa, extra energy. And then it releases that energy, and our signal goes its merry way. And it's like we've moved our transmitting antenna to a spot a couple of 100 miles high. So why wouldn't 160 meters be the best possible DX frequency? I mean, why do we even need the other bands? Well, there isn't just an MUF, a maximum usable frequency. There's also an LUF, the lowest usable frequency. You get below this frequency, and the signal just gets absorbed by the lower layers of the ionosphere, and it never gets re-radiated. How does that happen? Now, there's another mechanism at play here. So here's the rule. In order to re-radiate your signal, an electron must remain a free electron for at least the duration of one cycle of your signal. So if it finds an ion that's missing an electron and recombines before it can re-radiate the signal it just absorbed, it will join that atom, and then it gives up the energy of your signal as heat. Even if it just slams into a neutral atom, it'll give up some energy as heat. And if that happens, folks, you're not communicating, you're just warming up the ionosphere with your expensive watts. Your beach ball is what you might call a goner. In the upper layers of the ionosphere, free electrons can last for days. In the lower layers, free electrons can last for a microsecond or less. That's if they're close together, see? At a microsecond, any frequency under 1 megahertz is too low. It's going to get absorbed for sure. Since the 160 meter band starts at 1.8 megahertz, well, any recombination faster than about 2 microseconds is going to eat 100% of our signal. And even at a full 2 microseconds, chances are good our signal got there too late for about half of the free electrons because they've already been out for a microsecond. Now, of course, anything could happen with any individual free electron, but we can calculate the average rate of ionization, that's the good stuff, and recombination, that's the bad stuff, for a given layer under given conditions. So longer waves, lower frequencies tend to be absorbed more than shorter waves, higher frequencies. In fact, the ratio of absorption at two different frequencies can be expressed mathematically as the inverse square of the wavelength. That's a rule that just keeps showing up in radio, right? Simply put, if you double the wavelength, you get 4 times as much absorption. Now, let's see how this all stacks up layer by layer. In the D layer, we have lots and lots of molecules to ionize, but not much radiation to do so. Most of the radiation gets absorbed in the upper layers. Because the molecules are in close proximity, the few electrons that get free are rapidly reabsorbed. Since the MUF is determined by the amount of space between free electrons, and the D layer's free electrons have a lot of space between them, MUF will be relatively low, making the D layer useless for VHF and UHF. Higher frequencies just shoot straight through to space. As you'll see, in the case of the D layer, MUF might as well stand for maximum unusable frequency. At the same time, because of the proximity of those other molecules, the recombination rate in the D layer is very rapid. That means only higher frequencies could possibly be re-radiated. Lower frequencies will be absorbed before they can be re-radiated. In normal conditions, that means when it comes to propagation, there is no frequency that is high enough to get through the D layer and be refracted back to Earth by the layers above, and there's no frequency low enough to not get absorbed. So for us, almost always, the D layer is a dud. Shortly after sunset, the D layer starts to disappear. Because it's higher and it stays in the sunlight longer, the E layer persists longer than the D layer. So here we have the E layer. The molecules have thinned out now, right? And the radiation is higher than in the D layer. So we have more free electrons, but we also still have relatively rapid recombination happening, although it's slower than in the D layer. During the day, most of the time, we can't get anything through the D layer that can be refracted by the E layer, and that adds up to 0 or very limited daytime propagation from the E layer. However, as 6-meter fans know, when isolated pockets of very high free electron density occur in the E layer, we have possibilities for low VHF, 10-meter or 6-meter usually, propagation. Those frequencies can get through the D layer, and under those conditions can be refracted by those isolated pockets of high free electron density. That's what we call sporadic E propagation. Lower frequencies won't work in sporadic E because the recombination rate is still too high in the E layer, but in a sporadic E pocket, there are enough free electrons to refract a higher frequency signal. All right, then happily we get to the F layer, the highest region of them all, up there where there's barely any atmosphere at all, and now the atmospheric density has really thinned out, and the radiation is at its maximum. So lots and lots of free electrons get created, and they last a long, long time. This is why the F layer is, with just a little help from solar conditions, rich territory for HF propagation. There are plenty of free electrons to refract a wide range of frequencies, and the absorption rate is very, very low. Okay, here comes some good news. The very, very good news about ionospheric propagation is that it looks like we're enjoying a really nice solar maximum. In other words, there's a pretty good chance that HF propagation is going to be pretty good for a while now. Who knows how long? I don't even want to say how long because I don't want to jinx it. So, what are the techniques to take advantage of this happy circumstance? And you know, those of you who are long-term hams know we went through a long time of really pretty dismal propagation, and now suddenly it's waking up. Well, okay, the most important technique to take advantage of these great ionospheric conditions is highly technical. You may want to take some notes on this, just maybe jot it on your palm or whatever. But what you want to do is you want to stay alive long enough for propagation to improve. Okay, next most important, and if you've been a ham for more than about 15 minutes, you can guess what I'm about to say, is have the right antenna. Having a jazzy new HF radio is all well and good, and we have our little IC 7300 here, and we love it, but at the risk of being skinned alive by the radio merchants at Hamcation, people have been communicating all over the world for a long time with far less sophisticated radios than what's available from the radio merchants. Having a high power amplifier is nice too, but unless it's hooked up to the right antenna, not very much great is going to happen. So the object of the game when it comes to ionospheric DX is to get our signal to encounter lots of those long-lasting free electrons up in the F layer. So takeoff angle is very important, and generally the lower the better. So here are 3 different takeoff angles and the resulting skywave or lack of same. Signal A is taking off straight up. That signal encounters nothing but the minimum vertical thickness of the ionosphere, and it's on its way to a galaxy far, far away. Signal B manages a moderately decent takeoff angle, right? But doesn't quite make the bend all the way, gets diffracted some, but it doesn't hang out in the free electron zone long enough to make it back to Earth, so it's off to a different galaxy, also far, far away. Signal C takes off practically skimming the horizon. It runs into enough ionosphere to get bent back to Earth, and somebody is finally having a QSO with a fellow Earthling. So what antenna will produce this miraculous effect? I mean, how much money do you need to save up to send off to HRO or DX engineering? I mean, do you need to mortgage the house in order to do this? Well, one of my favorite things that I ever heard about antennas is when it comes to antennas, the short answer is there's no short answer. However, I'm going to try to be brief. This is the great news. You look at this. This is the pattern of a dipole. We're looking end on to a regular old long wire dipole. I don't care if it's an end fed or an OC off center or a regular, center fed, whatever. It's going to be about this if it is properly installed. Okay, you're going to get minus 3 dB beam width down here at 15 degrees. That's not bad. And the full blast is coming out at about 35 degrees. That's not awful. Okay. So you can buy a dipole kit from the commercial people for dozens of dollars, or just with a little bit of handiness, you can build your own. Now, for those of us without any possibility of getting a dipole the proper distance in the air to achieve that, let me say that again, the proper distance in the air to achieve that, you need to be up about at least a half a wavelength, and ideally 1 wavelength. Please know that suboptimum can still work. It just won't be optimum. But here's the deal with ham radio, and one of the messages we send over and over in our books. Optimum is not required. I absolutely believe that if I went out and inspected 100 random ham stations, about 99 of them would be in some significant way suboptimum. The other guy is hiding it better. So if you want to play on the HF bands, charge ahead. Your success will depend a lot more on your persistence and the sunspot index than on whether or not you have the perfect setup. Now, for those of us with the budget, the space, and the commitment, sure, there's the big tower with the big beam antenna at the top, but I really want you to be clear. Those are in the nice to have list, not the need to have list. My friend, who actually inspired the little propagation book, has more than 200 countries confirmed, and 300 worked. Now, he does have a beam antenna, but I'm telling you, it's not on a tower like these. It's on a little 25-footer held up by his garage. He has a long wire strung from the top of that to the top of his 2-story house for 40 and 80 meters. That is certainly not the prescribed 130 feet above the ground, but still 200 countries confirmed. Hard to argue with that. So get in there and play. Well, we have been talking for a while here and barely even skimmed the surface of the topic of propagation, but I hope you at least have a framework to use to think about propagation. And if you walk away with nothing else, the notion that there are literally many possible paths to successful communication, no matter what band you are on. All right, if we have any questions, I will be delighted to take them. And thank you so much for letting me come and visit your club again. We have been to Hamcation once, and so I'm pretty sure I've met some of you before. But anyway, thanks for having me at your club. Who has a question?
Anybody have questions? Oh, got one. Hold on.
I just want to make a comment to your presentation. That was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any questions? Any others? Comments?
I was hoping to I heard your president bragging about how your presentations are getting better and better. I was actually kind of hoping to lower the bar a little for the next person, but okay.
I can't ask.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I cannot ask a question. I only have to say you just changed my thinking on how it works. I didn't know any better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, folks. It's been a great being with you. Let me say one more thing. In our technician book, in the very first chapter, one of the first things we tell people is that they don't realize it right now. But one of the reasons they want to get their license is to join a ham club. And it's been a tough time for ham clubs, man. I don't know about your club, but our club really suffered through COVID. I mean, not only did we have the whole COVID mess, but we got kicked out of our meeting spot, which was a hospital. And for some reason, they didn't want a bunch of strangers wandering in there once a month. Got all upset about it. And so we were homeless for a while, and we, finally ended up in a theater, and now we're in a church, and we're battling back. But man, we were down to about 13 people showing up on Zoom. And it was tough times. My wife was the president through all of this too. And so we're rebuilding, and I'm sure you've been through tough times. And I really believe that what we do is valuable for our community, and it's valuable for our friends. So thanks for hanging in there, and thanks for continuing to do Hamcation, which is awesome, and for keeping your club alive.
Thank you. And I actually I actually have the real question for you. So talking about some exotic forms of working, let's say moonbounds, when the signal is bounced, when the signal is sent from the Earth to bounce the moon, is the ratio of absorption on the way back the same as when the signal leaves the Earth?
Yeah, and in fact, you're getting, at that point, you're getting very close to space propagation. So if you were in a spaceship and you wanted to talk to another spaceship, I understand we don't do that a lot, but if you had that going, that would be the least complicated form of propagation that there is. And Earth, Moon, Earth is pretty close to that, because you're going straight up and straight back down. Where you're going to have loss is, one, of course, the old root mean square law still applies. So, double the distance, lose 4 times as much signal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you're dealing with an extraordinarily weak signal by the time it gets back down. And then there's also some loss that happens just because of the surface of the moon being irregular. It's going to scatter your signal some, and so you lose even more scattering off into space. But yeah, that's Earth Moon Earth propagation is fascinating. Bring lots of watts is my answer.
And Michael, a great presentation. I just want to sit there and say we're coming down to our wire where we have to actually leave the facility because the facility is going to be closing soon. But I want to sit there and ask the question. I know that it has your email address. Are you okay with if we share your email address with the membership? And if they have any questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, and actually, the best way is to use the contact us form on our website, which is fasttrackham.com. But please feel free to share the web address or the email address as well. We're always happy to hear from hams. We love ham radio, so we have the greatest job in the world. We talk to hams all day. It's great.
Yep, your presentation is much appreciated, and I know that you have donated. You and your wife donated books to Hamcation for door prizes, and we appreciate that very much. They're always well received, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again at Hamcation in the future.
There's two things that argue against it, and that's the calendar and the map. It is a long way from Seattle to you all, and the calendar where your convention happens is when we're thrashing to get the new edition of the license courses out. But we really do want to make it down there again. We loved it. That was a fun show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks all. Have a great evening.
Thanks. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up our evening here with the door prizes. We have four door prizes. Cell phones, and radios not included. Your choice as always. I'm sorry, I forgot what your name was. Steve donated a one of the hotspots that he makes for one of our door prizes tonight. We have a amateur radio version of Henson Kinks for our 8RL 3rd edition or 19th edition. I'm sorry. The power poles, which is always needed by amateur radio operators, and one of those little connectings. If you have a handheld that you need a little miniature. I'm sorry, it's late at night for me. SMA to SO 239 or 238. For your handheld. Now, your kit might need one of those. So those are your choices for this evening. And we went ahead and pre-drawed tickets real quick. So we go speed it up a little bit. Michael has that.
All right, 653, 653, last three. 653.
Just come on up. Your choice of what you want to get.
Next up, 624, 624. Next up, 637.
Wife says hotspot.
All right. And the last one is going to be 654.
654. Come on up. Henson Kinks. All right, guys, real quick, I just want to make sure everybody knows next month's meeting is September the 4th. We see you then.